1. This happened a while back when I went through a bit of a stoner phase. Me and a friend of mine would meet up at night on occasion to smoke weed after getting off work. We would chat, smoke, listen to music in his car, and then go back to our houses as the night wore off. This one particular night he picked me up at around 10:30 p.m. and parked his car at a popular local park. Rather than smoking, we took marijuana-infused candies. We sat in the car with music playing loudly, as we were slowly getting higher and higher as the edibles kicked in. Our attention to the car's surroundings had by this point fully dissipated, and we were shocked as we saw two dark figures jump up from the right side of the vehicle and start running forward through the parking lot. As they started running, a large SUV, with the trunk already open, quickly drove in front of them. The two figures, who we made out to be both male, hopped in and shut the door to the trunk of the car as it sped away from the park. Despite how idiotic it sounds now, we both had a bit of a laugh after they drove away, figuring it was just some teenagers screwing around. About 30 minutes passed, and we had forgotten about it. Due to our then currently altered states of mind, we had yet again stopped paying attention to our surroundings. A few cars had driven in and out of the parking lot since then, and we had never bothered to look at them too closely. As our high was at its peak in intensity, I suddenly noticed in the side mirror that the SUV that had sped away earlier was parked directly behind us with its light off. I, pointing this out to my friend, he looked pretty nervous, but began trying to rationalize it, saying that it may just be a different car after all, or maybe they just wanted to park for a bit like we were at the time. We both got a bit creeped out and decided to start driving off. And then the SUV behind us started its engine and began to follow us. It was about midnight by this point, and there were no other cars on the road, so they just kept on following us. We kept turning onto different roads throughout the quiet residential neighborhood we found ourselves in. We were trying desperately to see if we could lose them, but they were a mere car length behind us the whole time. We were driving aimlessly for about 10 minutes, panicking at this point. We decided our best option would be to drive somewhere where we might encounter other people. We made our way to a local grocery store at the nearest strip mall, parking next to the only other car in the lot. Parking sounds like the last thing we would want to do, but I wasn't driving, and my friend was terrified of the idea of being chased while stoned on a busier road in the middle of the night. As we parked, the car started to rapidly circle us over and over again. They did this for about 15 minutes. Eventually, one of them opened the sunroof and poked his torso out and began yelling at us. The man was white, average-sized, and appeared to be in his late 20s or early 30s. He kept repeating something along the lines of, "We're gonna kick your fucking ass, you fucking faggots," as he made obscene gestures directed at us. This was accompanied by everybody else in the car yelling and trying to intimidate us. I could make out the voices of 3 or 4 other people. I was positive that, at this point, they were waiting for one of us to snap and exit our vehicle. Me and my friend were ferociously debating as to if we should call the cops or not. My friend was hesitant due to his somewhat intoxicated state, and was worried he could get into trouble with the police. We waited another 5 minutes as they did this, until we saw a rather beefy and muscled man exit the grocery store, with shopping bags in his hands, heading towards the car parked alongside us. He began to unlock his car. I bolted out of my friend's car and quickly explained the situation to the man. He quickly noticed the SUV circling us. As the man sticking out of the SUV saw that we were no longer alone, he ducked back into the car as it drove off down the street. The man seemed sympathetic to the situation we found ourselves in, and waited with us for a few minutes until we were sure the SUV wasn't coming back. Me and my friend drove around a little bit to make sure we were definitely not being followed again, and he soon dropped me off at home. I cut my cannabis use drastically since that night, and my friend quit entirely. It was probably the most scared the both of us had ever been in our lives. Car full of possibly homophobic stalker maniacs. I hope I never meet any of you again. 2. This happened a year ago. I live in New Mexico, and sometimes I have to drive to Texas for business. I'd always enjoyed driving around the state. Lots of wide open spaces in between the pockets of civilization that dot the landscape. Right after the 4th of July holiday, I got a call to go to Texas on business. I'd made that drive a number of times before, and roughly 2 hours of it is through a very empty stretch of highway that doesn't really have anything out there beyond a tiny little town, complete with post office, gas station, mom and pop store connected to it, and a few trailers that look abandoned. One of those blink and you'll miss it places. I would usually stop in there for coffee and a bathroom break whenever I had to make that particular drive. And this morning was no different. I spotted the gas pumps and store in the distance, and pulled off the highway into their tiny gravel parking lot on the south side of the store. The layout of the place is the pumps are in the front, store behind them, and there's a small parking lot for customers on the south side, a dirt road running past the north side of the store, and a parking lot in back that I'd glimpsed before when driving by that usually had a few cars, presumably belonging to whoever worked there. This is important to the story, bear with me. Anyways, I pulled into the parking lot on the south side, which was empty. I remember thinking this was a good thing, because usually the place was packed, and I was in a bit of a hurry. For a moment, I wondered if they were closed, but I'd been there on that same day of the week plenty of times, and their neon sign, "We're open," was lit up, so I got out of the car. My first clue something wasn't right, when I nearly tipped over a small stack of beer cans. The parking lot was in fact strewn with the type of trash one sees from parties: chip bags, food wrappers, disposable cups, and lots of beer cans. I thought that was strange, because every other time I'd been there the place was neat, clean to the point of near OCD even. But the pumps and the entrance to the store looked shiny as ever. So I told myself it was probably just they'd had a 4th of July party there and no one had cleaned up yet. I started to walk towards the store, but about halfway there, something made me stop and look around. I got a really strong sensation of being watched, but I didn't see anyone. In fact, I realized that was part of the problem. The whole place felt deserted and still. I didn't remember it being so dead any other time I'd been there, especially on a weekday morning. For a moment I wavered. Should I go ahead and go up to the door, just to check it out, or walk back to my car and forget the whole thing? I'm sort of paranoid anyways, and something about the whole thing just felt off. But then the lure of coffee. They had good coffee. And the bathroom made me push that uneasiness aside, and I kept walking forward. I was nearly to the door when I heard the unmistakable crunch of gravel under tires coming from the north side of the store, just out of my line of sight. The noise startled me, because it was so quiet that the sound may as well have been a gunshot going off. Dead silent 1 minute, then the sound a truck makes if you have to push it to start on a gravel road, and it's rolling forward. I was pretty sure I heard footsteps briefly as well. The hair stood up on my arms, and I decided I'd had it. I was noping out of there. I had maybe 5 feet left to get to my car, when this big-ass black pickup truck, with 2 guys in it, rolled out far enough beyond the wall where I could see them. Mind you, they weren't on the dirt road, which would have made sense, but right up against the side of the store itself. I saw them staring at the front door. Then the one in the passenger seat caught sight of me and said something to the driver, pointing to me. They looked surprised, as if they'd been expecting me to be at the door or maybe inside by now. Something else to note: the north side of the building is much closer to the entrance of the store than the sound end. When they saw me backing away to my vehicle, Only then did they start up the engine to their truck. I waved, hoping that they were friendly, but instead I got nothing but cold stares. Not friendly or hostile, just staring at me, while the one in the passenger seat kept talking to the driver who wasn't moving. At that point, I dropped all pretense of not being scared and bolted the rest of the way to my car, jumping in, then locking the doors before pulling out a knife I carried in my glove compartment for self-defense. There were no other stores nearby, a few abandoned trailers. The post office was up the road, and so tiny that it wouldn't be shelter anyways, even if a mail carrier was in there. If they decided to come after me, I had nowhere and no one to run to, and the nearest town was over an hour away. I started the car up, backed up and moved to pull out on the highway, quietly freaking out because I was in a car that likely would not be able to outrun or outmaneuver them if they decided to come after me. I paused at the entrance of the highway to see what they were doing, and my heart sank. They'd also pulled up to the highway as if to get on it, but they were just sitting there, not moving, even though they could have pulled out before me and been well on their way, since they didn't have to back up and turn around first, like I had. I'm not sure what would have happened next, but I spotted an 18-wheeler coming down the highway towards us, going my direction. No sight has ever been more welcome than that beautiful, shiny rig. The guys were so intent on watching me, I don't think they saw it in time to plan a countermove to what I did next. I waited until it was close to them, but still with enough distance for me to get in front of the rig without causing him to slam on his brakes, and then I peeled out on the highway. I looked back in the mirror and they were still sitting there, with the driver now flipping me the bird. But they didn't follow. Quite possibly since they knew there was now at least one other vehicle on the road, who could come to my aid if needed. After that, I didn't let off the gas until I hit the next town. I called the state patrol for that area to file a report for suspicious activity, and they told me the gas station and store had been closed for a couple of months. They said they'd check it out, but I never heard back. To this day, I wonder what would have happened if I had just kept going up to that door. If I had, I'd have been either in the store if the door was unlocked, or right at the door, where they'd have easily been able to jump out and block any escape, or chase me down before I could get to my car. It felt like I'd escaped a near ambush, and to this day, I hate to think what might have happened if I'd been paying less attention. That incident, and a few others, are why I got my CCW shortly after that. 3. Please be aware the following story contains themes of child molestation. I met this girl in college, Shelley. We never really met eye to eye and all, but we tried to keep civil during classes. She came to college with a couple of friends, Kim and Leah. Me and Kim started dating shortly after starting college, and that's when things began to get weird. Shelley immediately tried to break me and Kim apart, by the usual rumors and false accusations, insinuating that I was only dating her to get sex, which wasn't the case at all. Me and Kim, along with the rest of our classmates, decided to keep her at arm's length. Even our tutors noted her behavior and brought her aside to tell her to stop. Even if me and Kim tried to complain to her directly, she would beg us to stop bullying her, because she was epileptic and had learning difficulties. Obviously her self-defense mechanism to get people away from her that she didn't like. That's when things started to get strange. During our course, we were allowed to take an extracurricular activity. I chose photography and media editing, while Shelley and a few other female classmates took a childcare course. It was during this point that I started to notice something strange. On a regular basis, I would see Shelley in town with friends. Now, these friends were mainly close with quite obvious learning difficulties. I knew a couple of them from college, but the people they were all associating with were all clearly very young. I found out from Kim that during the last year of their secondary school education, Shelley took a childcare course there, as well as doing some babysitting in her spare time to earn some money. At first, I didn't think much of it. She obviously spent a lot of time with young kids and teens, and it must have been normal for her. It didn't seem odd at the time, but there was always this feeling in the back of my mind saying, there's something not right about this. I quickly dismissed it, and after a while I forgot about it entirely. Up until I got back in contact with some old school friends. My one friend, who I will name V, told me that Shelley was quite abusive and had a habit of being mean to people, especially young kids. Knowing what she was like from college, I just wrote this off with her being a mean bitch. Yet even after several years, following us all leaving college, I would still see her hanging around town with very young people. After a while, Shelley got in a relationship with a fat idiot named Jay. Me and Jay have never spoken in person, but I found out that he threatened V's partner during a confrontation at a local cafe. One time I witnessed Jay yelling at Shelley in the middle of town, telling her she was stupid and an idiot. Now at this point, all my hatred for Shelley quickly disappeared, and I felt like slugging Jay in the head for treating Shelley so badly, especially as she was obviously pregnant at the time. A couple of incidents followed, including Shelley tripping over a pothole while heavily pregnant. I know it made quite a stir in the local papers, and within days the pothole was filled in by the local council. A year or so later, I got news that was both a mix of surprising and unsurprising. I heard a rumor in town that Shelley got arrested for child molestation. At first I just laughed it off, and thought it was just a harmless rumor from people who see her in town hanging around with young kids. Then 6 months ago, she turned up in the paper again. The report said that she denied 11 charges of sexually assaulting 2 young girls. Reading that, it hit me like a brick. Everything made sense to me, the babysitting, childcare course, hanging around with young kids. It just fit perfectly. I got the date of the impending court case and made a note of it. Several months later, the court case started and I followed it intently on a website that shows the outline of court cases. Me, V, and her partner all met up during the court case and discussed what happened. V and her partner both thought she would be found guilty, while I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Innocent until proven guilty and all that shit. During the week, it became obvious that it was a serious case. In the end, there were 7 witnesses that gave evidence against Shelley. The guilty verdict was read out, and according to newspaper reports, Shelley started crying as soon as the verdict was unveiled. In the reports I read a sickening part of the case that shook me to the core. Shelley committed the crimes while asking the girls to play a new game called Under the Bridge. After reading that, I felt physically sick. According to court transcripts, Shelley had such severe learning difficulties that she couldn't even defend herself during the court case, and left all the work to the lawyer. She was obviously playing the I am disabled, don't bully me card. She was due to be sentenced a few weeks ago, but apparently has been postponed for psychiatric reports. I just hope the doctors that are investigating her can see through her bullshit. The worst thing that came from this is that Shelley's child is still in her care by all accounts. Shelley, if I ever see you again, I hope it's with you behind bars. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 180. Thank you very much to everyone who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Okay, I was going to try and get a glitch video done for Thursday this week. As it stands at the moment, that's probably not going to happen because I don't have many responses back, but I'll try and get one out for next week at some point. Again, we're not fully back, but I'm building up. See, we had 1 video this week, this will be number 2, and I've already got audio for another video, so that'll be out, well, this will be, what, Wednesday? Hopefully you're getting this. So either Thursday or Friday I'll put the other video out. And I'm just, yeah, I'm going to shut up now is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give my throat a rest. It's not entirely throat problems, but that is one of the things keeping me from recording. Better than it was, though, in a way. I just had to stop recording the other week there altogether, but at least I can actually get some work done. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.